It's time to call our shots. On today's episode, we discuss the crazy blockbuster Matthew Stafford, Jared Goff trade. We then preview Super Bowl 55. We have Tom Brady versus Patrick Mahomes, the great one versus the next one. We also give our picks and who you should bet on. We then pass it over to some NHL coverage where we have Puck Me, major storylines, and we're rolling out a new segment, Hot or Not. We give you a standings update, some league leaders, and we end the show with some player spotlights. We want to thank the great CMS listeners for all of your support. We have more great content in the pipeline. Roll the intro.
Making their way to the ring, the reigning, defending podcast champs, calling my shots. There's only one way you can take this, and it's in that ring. Who wants to go toe-to-toe with the champs? This is Calling My Shots.
Welcome to this week's episode of Calling My Shots. I'm joined by my co-host, Zach, who I know is dreading this episode because of how much the Penguins dominated the Rangers. So, Zach, what's going on? Are you hanging in there? Are you staying okay? I know it's been a rough week for the Blue Shirts.
Well, dominating is a relative word. I don't know if I would call the Penguins dominating the Rangers when the Rangers beat that ass 3-1 last night. So,
yeah, but what's your record? What's your record against the Penguins? Isn't it like 1-3? Am I right?
It is.
1-3.
I've said this before. I'll say this again. The Rangers' trajectory is going up, and the Penguins are on their way down. So,
well, we can get into it because there's some news about your boy D'Angelo that we'll be breaking on this podcast.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. We've certainly got some black eyes to talk about, no doubt. So that'll be interesting to get into. What's going on with you?
Being constantly frustrated with the Penguins' ineptitude in goaltending. It's ridiculous. These guys can't even post over a 900 save percentage. It's frustrating. But I'm also ready. We got the Super Bowl coming up. And I know, Zach, we no longer have the AGA award. We retired it until next season. So we're starting to shift gears a little bit. We're going to be introducing some baseball coverage, college baseball, MLB, you name it. We're going to cover it. So this week's episode and next week's episode will be the last time we talk about football until later on in the summer because we're going to make the transition strictly to NHL and baseball. Zach, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I'm excited. A little bittersweet, into football season, kind of see one season close. But hey, we get to open the book on a new baseball season and get to talk some college baseball as well as keep rolling on the hockey train. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I am pumped for the college baseball season. South Carolina has a tough schedule, but I think they're shaping up to have a really good season. Got two really good pitchers who are definitely going to get drafted this year, so we'll see. Plus, we have an 0-2 rematch, Texas versus South Carolina. That's kind of a non-conference series, so the college baseball season is going to be great this year.
Yeah, that's right. I believe there are 5 teams in the SEC West that are ranked and 4 in the SEC East, so very impressive. Preseason polls mean nothing, but it is kind of cool to gauge these programs, especially after we didn't get to have a postseason last year, so it'll be really fun and really exciting. Let's go.
Yeah, Ole Miss is ranked in the top 4, right?
Yep, perennial baseball power.
With 0 national championships. So let's start off today's episode with some National Football League coverage. And we're going to begin with the best storylines. Everyone's been talking about this, so of course we have to divulge our opinion. But Zach, Matthew Stafford was traded to the Rams for Jared Goff, first-round picks in 2022 and 23, and a third-round pick in 2021. So a little bit of backstory on this deal. The Rams were interested in him initially, but actually the Bears, Broncos, and Panthers all offered first-round picks plus more to try and get Stafford. And Carolina actually offered the 8th overall pick. New England was willing to offer a second-round pick and a player, but Stafford literally said, the one team I will not play for is New England. So don't know if he has animosity towards Bill, hates the cold weather. But this was a crazy trade that I don't think anyone saw coming. And I think what it shows is the league obviously values and respects Matthew Stafford's talent if you look at all of the trade packages that were offered. So, Zach, what were your thoughts on this deal?
Looking at this from a couple of ways, so you talked about the Bears, Broncos, Panthers, and Patriots all looking at him. I think you take that piece by piece. Obviously, the Lions did not want to trade him in division to the Bears. That Matthew Stafford thought the Panthers were a little further away for him to just jump right in there. It may be another Lions situation. Sure, he's got Christian McCaffrey and a couple of weapons there, but he probably felt they were a couple of years away. And the Broncos, maybe he just didn't want to play for John Elway in the cold weather. But I think you touched on it with the Patriots. I mean, he just didn't want to play for Belichick. But to me, looking at this from the other side, the Rams are pretty much saying that Matthew Stafford is a ginormous improvement over Jared Goff. Not only is he better than Jared Goff, but they think he's better than 2 first-round picks and a third-round pick, which is pretty big. I mean, we've talked before about Stafford, how he wasn't good enough to elevate them to that Super Bowl talent of Detroit, but he also was so good that they were not going to get a high draft pick to be able to kind of build around him. Another thing to think about here is this gamble by the Rams is huge. If it pays off, these first-round picks will be late in the first round anyway, so it's not like they're going to be 15 or something. They think that Matthew Stafford can lead them to a Super Bowl. But you can also look at this from the other way. This could blow up in their face, kind of like what happened to the Houston Texans and Miami Dolphins. The Houston Texans this year went 4-12 and should have had the 3rd overall pick. But they traded that pick to the Dolphins. So now the Dolphins are 10-6 and have the 3rd overall pick. And the Texans are 4-12 and get nothing. So this will be interesting. I really am curious to see how Matthew Stafford, because he's a gunslinger, I think it'll be interesting because if he didn't ball out, the Lions didn't win. I think we can all say that with certainty. Now he will have that number 1 defense in the league out there in Los Angeles. He'll have some offensive weapons. He'll have a good running game and some receivers. This could be really good for Matthew Stafford. He's only 32. He's got plenty of years left on the tires. This could be very interesting. I'm curious to see how this is going to shake out. What about you?
Yeah. So they have probably, I think, 4 years of a Super Bowl window to win with Stafford. Although you see guys like Breeze and Brady who are getting it down into their 40s. That's also been reassuring for the style that he plays. And he's also one of those guys that's extremely durable and really hasn't missed too many games in his career. It was interesting, though, Zach, because when we talked about this last week, we were discussing Stafford landing in Washington as that being probably one of the prime places for him to go. But I don't think either you or I saw this deal happening where he literally got swapped over to the Rams for Jared Goff and was basically a quarterback swap plus picks. And also, Sean McVay hates first-round draft picks. They're now not going to have a first-round draft pick in 8 straight drafts. But
that is an incredible stat. That is an incredible stat.
But they've been successful. You can't really knock them too much because they've made the playoffs every single year under McVay. And they've even been to a Super Bowl. Zach, I think that this is a slam dunk deal for the Rams. And I really think that the Rams won this deal overall. I do believe in Matthew Stafford's talent. The situation in Detroit is what plagued him. I don't think it has anything to do with his lack of talent. In the last 4 seasons, he's had 1 player rush for 100 yards in a game. When you can't run the ball and you have zero balance on offense and it all falls on your shoulder and you have an anemic defense, it's pretty hard to win football games. He's going into a very good situation with one of the most brilliant offensive minds in the NFL with Sean McVay. And I've been saying this, and you've heard me say this multiple times. Jared Goff is a system quarterback. I've been on that boat for a while. I think it was more McVay than it was Goff. And we see now that McVay believes the same, that it was more his system than it was Goff's actual talent. So this is a slam dunk for the Rams. They're starting out as the Super Bowl favorites in the NFC. I really think that this elevates them, and they now have a franchise quarterback who actually has some talent around him.
Maybe so. I won't go far as to say it's a slam dunk yet. It very well could be, but I will say it's a slam dunk for the Lions because not only did they get rid of Matthew Stafford and his ginormous contract, they also got 3 picks and a relatively good quarterback in Jared Goff that they could build around that is only 24, 25 years old. So they've got a young quarterback there, and they've got a lot of picks. Now, one interesting thing I'll say is that I heard today that Detroit is contemplating actually trading Jared Goff for more picks to go ahead and have in this 2021 draft. And I got to be honest, I think the Lions have finally done something right. Matthew Stafford, like we've both said, if he wasn't Superman, they did not win for as long as he's been there, especially after Calvin Johnson retired. But I think this is the first thing that they've done right. I think that they're going to blow it up and literally start from scratch. I think this will be good for both parties.
Yeah. I can see how getting the amount of picks that they did will work in their favor. And if they can deal Goff and somehow trade up and draft a guy like Lawrence or Justin Fields, then it will work out for them. But I also am a firm believer that Matt Stafford, in the right situation, is the top 10 quarterback in the NFL. So I think it helps the Rams more because they're now perennial Super Bowl favorites. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see them hoist the Lombardi Trophy with a guy like Stafford. He has all the talent in the world, and he's in probably the best offensive system in the league. I've always stated that Jared Goff is a system quarterback and overrated. That's my...
Well, so basically, when I was talking last week about him going to Washington, I didn't even contemplate Jared Goff and the Rams being on the table. I think that their defense in Washington is as good as Los Angeles's. Obviously, LA had a little more better stats, but I will say that LA has more weapons in a running game. This will be interesting.
So, Zach, another interesting thing that arose out of this deal, the wide receivers coach for the Buffalo Bills, Chad Hall, do you happen to know who his sister is?
I do not. Jared Goff's girlfriend.
No. So it is Matthew Stafford's wife, Kelly Hall Stafford. So put the rumor mills together, and that has a lot to do with how this deal worked out. Because McVay and Chad Hall were both elite quarterbacks, well, decent quarterbacks growing up in the Atlanta area. So McVay and Stafford were actually kind of buddies before all this happened. And then there was actually reports that McVay visited Stafford and his wife in Cabo, Mexico.
Okay.
A little bit more details into the deal to keep the listeners informed.
Dalton is one of those guys that tracks trains left and right when coaching search is going on and calls the TSA to try to get some playing schedule. So there you go.
I call it unique content and more of a story for our listeners. And it's called sports reporting, but give you a little bit of extra detail that most podcasts aren't going to talk about. So anyway, let's move into the next storyline I have for you. Tom Brady says he's definitely considering playing past age 45. Zach, is it ever going to end? Are we ever going to see Tom Brady retire? Is he just out there on a personal vendetta to prove that the TB12 method can elevate him to being an NFL starting quarterback into his 50s? Like, what else does the guy have left to play for? I don't get it.
Well, I'll say this. Brady, his decline has been a lot softer than every other quarterback in history. You usually look at all these quarterbacks like Peyton Manning, like Drew Brees. If you look where they are 2 seasons before they retire and then look at their retirement, I mean, there is a sharp decline in production and arm strength and whatever you want to call it, productivity. Brady just hasn't hit that yet. I don't know if he's even hit his decline, really. I mean, yes, he's not quite as nimble and doesn't quite have the arm strength as he used to, but I mean, he is very efficient. It seems like he's actually even throwing the ball, being more aggressive now, throwing a little more interceptions now than he has the last couple of years because he can. I mean, he doesn't have to be perfect with this Buccaneers team, but I'll say this.
He threw 43 touchdowns at 40.
He did. Yeah, that's incredible. The only thing that could take this from happening is what happened to Brett Favre. Brett Favre got that big-time hit that just knocked Brett Favre out. He was a man of steel for 22 years as long as he played, and it finally took one hit to knock him out. A good shot. I think Brady will be good, and then one day he's going to get knocked around like that, and then he's going to be like, man, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. My body just didn't quite recover as it normally did. But for Brady to be doing what he is at 43 is nothing short of amazing. Yeah.
There's been no other quarterback in NFL history that has been able to replicate what Tom Brady has accomplished. And honestly, I don't think anyone ever will be able to. And that might be a strong word, but it's kind of like Gretzky's point record. And if Brady wins the Lombardi Trophy again, 7 Super Bowls, more Super Bowls than any NFL franchise has individually, it's ridiculous. It has to be an unbreakable record. So it's mind-blowing, the success that he's still having. And at this point, I'm not going to bet against him. Maybe we will see Tom play until he's 50.
It's incredible. It is incredible. You know, one of these days you're going to be able to talk to your kids or your grandkids and be like, you know what, I saw Tom Brady play. And whether you hate him or whether you love him, I mean, it's pretty wild to be able to sit here and just in awe of this guy.
Yeah. Well, and he has a very mixed reputation. People either love him or they hate him for, all of his off-field criticisms that he's acquired, the TB12 method, but you can't deny the fact that he is the ultimate winner and probably the greatest football player we've ever seen and will ever see.
Let me throw this out there for the old-timers who listen, and I'll just, because we want to give everybody their fair share at this, George Blanda played until he was 48 years old. He was in a limited capacity in his last few years in Oakland from the late to 60s to the mid-70s, but he threw the ball around a little bit. Nobody's going to argue that, but for Brady to play every snap like he does is nothing short of crazy.
Yeah. So, Zach, what do you think about all the Deshaun Watson talk? Do you think he's actually going to get traded, and what would be the best situation for him?
I think Deshaun Watson's worst case scenario happened. And what I mean by that is with Matthew Stafford being traded for that king's ransom that he was, with an NFL caliber quarterback in Jared Goff, 2 first-round picks and a third-round pick, I think that Deshaun Watson's asking price will be way higher. But Deshaun Watson has to look at this of 2 ways. One, is any team going to actually bite on that? Yes, maybe. There might be 1 or 2. But the other way to look at it is if somebody does bite on it after they've given up all these assets, is it even going to be worth it to go to one of these teams? So, I think that's one way to look at it.
The Jets are rumored to be the favorite to land Watson because apparently he wants to play for Salah, the new Jets head coach, which is interesting because everyone was, before this started, under the impression that they were going to draft either Fields or Lawrence if they could trade up to get him. So the conversation's really shifted, and in the NFL, like we saw with Stafford, you really never know what's going to happen.
For sure. I saw a report today that Deshaun Watson wouldn't be opposed to sitting out the 2021 season, which kind of sucks, but, he's going to do what he's got to do for the betterment of his career. But I thought that'd be interesting if the Texans, because the Texans are not going to be very good next year.
Right.
Just like they weren't this year.
It also doesn't help that the new head coach that the Texans hired, Watson, doesn't have a favorable opinion on. He wanted Salah actually to be hired by the Texans, so that could be contributing to it as well. Zach, do you think Watson's a top 5 quarterback in the league right now?
No, and I don't think he ever was. I think he had a really good season a year and a half ago. And he is a very good quarterback, but he's not top 5.
Is he top 10?
Yeah, probably top 10, but he's not top 5. To me, when you say top 5, I'm thinking of Aaron Rodgers, I'm thinking of Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson, Josh Allen, and then you could throw Matthew Stafford in there. You could throw Tom Brady in there.
Yeah, Tom Brady has to be up there in the top 5.
I don't necessarily.
Even in his old age, if you look at his stats, throwing 43 touchdowns and taking a Tampa Bay Bucks team all the way to the Super Bowl, I think he has to be in the top 5 still.
Okay, you could argue him for the 5th spot, but going forward for the future, obviously Aaron Rodgers is older, but the other 3 guys are going to be good for a long time. And I just don't think Deshaun Watson's in there. Now, is Deshaun Watson better than Dak Prescott? Yeah, probably, but Deshaun Watson's not top 5 of the league.
Lamar Jackson or Deshaun Watson?
Oh, my goodness. You're talking about 2 guys. Lamar's a little more fleet of foot. Deshaun is a little better passer. I'd take Deshaun Watson just because I'm more of a pro passer, and I think that your longevity comes from being able to sling that rock. But I think I'd take Watson, but not by much.
Okay. Last one, Watson or Baker Mayfield?
Boy, I think that Baker's a much better passer. I think his decision-making gets him in trouble. But I think given the right QB coach, I'd take Baker.
Okay. See, I'd take Watson then.
I'm sure you would. I'm sure that pick in your Browns bias has nothing to do with that pick.
No, I just think Baker is turnover prone, a lot more turnover prone than Deshaun Watson. He really has to have a good running game in order for him to be successful. And I've seen Deshaun Watson play at elite levels without any rushing attack. I think
you don't think Duke and David Johnson were pretty good running backs there in Houston?
David Johnson is getting up there in age. He really is not what he used to be. And Duke Johnson, we saw what happened when he was a starter. He couldn't even rush for more than 10 yards.
Okay, Deshaun Watson or Ben Roethlisberger?
Watson.
Ooh.
At this stage in Ben's career, yeah, that's a no-brainer. I wanted the Steelers to take Matthew Stafford or to make a run at him. I'm actually not too happy that Roethlisberger's coming back. I think it's time to go a different direction.
Is it official that he is?
Yeah, they're working out a deal right now, is what it looks like. They're trying to get him to take a little bit of a pay cut because these Steelers are in a cap disaster right now. So we'll see. I'm sure Ben will come down on his price. If not, move on. It's that simple. He's in the later ages of his career. I'm thankful for everything he's accomplished for Pittsburgh, but at this stage of his career, he needs to take a more team-friendly deal.
Okay. All right.
Because
all right.
the Steelers also have to pay T.J. Watt this year, and Mr. Rooney basically said, we are willing to pay T.J. Watt whatever he wants to be a Steeler for life, which can't blame him. Probably a top 3 defensive player in the league right now.
Well, I'm sure at one time Mr. Rooney also said we'll pay Mr. Roethlisberger to be whatever he wants to be a Steeler for life. Am I wrong?
And at that time, Mr. Roethlisberger was worth it. But age has caught up to him, unlike Tom Brady.
Well, you can't sit here and say Pittsburgh Steeler for life and then be like, well, I guess never mind. We don't want you anymore.
I would like to see Ben retire as a Steeler. I just think he needs to take a team-friendly deal in the current situation.
Can the Steelers be successful and make a championship run next year with Ben Roethlisberger as their quarterback?
I don't think so.
No.
Yeah, I don't think so.
He's too stubborn. He never learns from his mistakes. He's been that way all his career. He has had a ton of success.
But this is also coming from an Eli homer, so...
No, he's had a ton of success, and he's a Hall of Famer. But at the same time, you can say the same thing about Eli. Eli, when his offensive line was gone, he was gone. Yep. He was done. But at the same time, the Steelers have always had good defenses and always had good offensive lines. Can you argue that?
In the year 2 through about 5 with Mike Tomlin, the Steelers' defense really was pretty terrible. And the secondary was abysmal at that point. They have always had a good offense with playmakers, but the defense, only the last, well, obviously during the Cowher era, and I would say the last 3 to 4 years under this current Tomlin era, the defense has been good. That time in the middle, the defense was actually pretty terrible, bottom half of the league.
Kind of like that 31st ranked unit that Eli had in 2011.
I'll admit this, Zach. Eli is not in the Hall of Fame without those 2 Super Bowl rings and what he did during those playoffs. You can't deny that.
No, but what I will say, absolutely, you're 100%. Well, I don't. He was top 7 in passing when he retired in passing touchdowns. What I'm saying is,
yeah, but he threw a ton of interceptions.
Sure, but so did Brett Favre.
Yeah.
So, but what I'm saying is that Big Ben's teams have consistently been better, and that's no knock on Big Ben. I'm just saying his teams have been better.
That's true. I won't deny that.
So, and that goes to the credit of the Steelers organization for consistently putting good players around Big Ben to give him the best chance to succeed. That is no knock on Ben. That's good for him. That's why his career has lasted as long as it has, and that's why they still won 11 games this year. 12 games this year, whatever. He has consistently been put in spots where he could succeed, and it's done well for him. That's not a knock. That's a compliment.
No, I agree. He's one of the greatest Steelers that I've watched. He's done a lot for the franchise, and he'll be a first ballot Hall of Famer. You know,
it's hard, especially with a organization like the Steelers, which has such deep tradition with the Steel Curtain in the 70s. But, it's hard to compare Terry Bradshaw to Ben Roethlisberger. But, statistically, Roethlisberger has the edge in Super Bowl wins. We all know that Terry's got 4. But you could make cases for any of them. It was a lot less pass-friendly league back then. But again, that's what these debates are for, and pretty much all you need to know is you're going to have 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks from the same organization. How many other franchises can you name that? When Eli gets in, the Giants will have 2.
Yep. San Francisco. Steve Young, Joe Montana.
Yeah. Technically Denver with Peyton in L.A., Indianapolis.
Yeah, when I think of Peyton Manning, I don't think of Denver. I think of Indianapolis.
I understand, but he still won a Super Bowl with Denver. But Indianapolis, Johnny Unitas and Peyton. Packers have 3 because Aaron Rodgers is getting in the Hall of Fame for sure.
Yep, absolutely.
Bart Starr won the first 2 Super Bowls. Obviously, Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers, pretty good company there. Those are just the names that come to mind right now. Dallas, Roger Staubach, and Troy Aikman. We said the Giants with Phil Simms and Eli Manning.
That's probably it, Zach, to be honest. We could go all day on this, but I do want to say, listeners, if you enjoy the random sports history, you're not going to get it anywhere else, then give us a shout out on Twitter. Show it to your friends. We greatly appreciate it. We're just trying to grow the show and build an active sports community. If you would like to support our show, the link is patreon.com/callingmyshots.
Dalton, guess what time it is?
It is Super Bowl time.
It is time for some Super Bowl predictions. We got the Chiefs, we got the Buccaneers. Tell me what you got.
So this is very intriguing because Tampa is the first NFL team to host a home Super Bowl game. They should be the favorites in this game, technically, if you just take the home field advantage, even though there's going to be a limited amount of fans. But Kansas City's favored in this matchup right now. They're favored by -3. The over set at 56.5 points. I would be inclined to take the over in this game because 28 points apiece. I think it's going to be more of a 35-31 type of game. But it really comes down to this, Zach. It's Tom Brady versus Patrick Mahomes. It's the greatest quarterback of all time versus the upcoming. The next one, the guy that's supposed to dethrone Tom Brady and supposed to step in and fill that void in the National Football League. So this is going to be tremendous to watch. If Mahomes wins, does Brady pass the torch down to Mahomes? Are we willing to say that Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL after superseding Tom Brady? I'm a little bit concerned here, though, about the Chiefs' injuries because losing Fisher is a huge knock on that offensive line. Watkins is still questionable to play. I know he's not a huge piece to it, but there's a couple other of injuries on the offensive line, and that could be critical because that's going to allow guys like Shaq Barrett to get after Mahomes, even though Mahomes can be tough to bring down. But that definitely leans in Tampa's favor. And it's actually looking at this point like Antonio Brown might play. I know the decision has been made, but Arians is saying that he looks better. This is going to be an incredible matchup, Zach, and I've been going back and forth on who to actually take here. But you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm not going to bet against Tom Brady. My pick would be the Bucs in this one, especially with the offensive line injuries that the Chiefs have.
I cannot fault that pick for a second. You said it yourself. This game is playing out like a Hollywood script. The legend versus the prodigy, the old versus the new, the GOAT versus the up-and-coming GOAT, the LeBron versus Jordan, whatever you want to call it. I think it's important to kind of look at this from a 10,000-foot angle. The Chiefs beat the Buccaneers 27-24 back in November on the 29th. The Chiefs picked off Brady twice and held that Buccaneer comeback short to come up short. Just looking at this statistically, so looking at offense, the Bucs are third in scoring offense and seventh in total yards per game in the show. Chiefs are sixth in offense scoring and first in yards per game. Defense, the Bucs have the edge with eighth in scoring defense, sixth in yards per game, and the Chiefs have 11th scoring ranked defense and 16th in yards per game. I think another important thing to do is look at the turnovers. Pretty even here. The Bucs are sixth in the league and the Chiefs are eighth in the league. One thing to think about here is the Chiefs, you know, they went 14-2. I think some of their defensive stats are deceiving because if you think about it, they're always up big early. And so the defense is always kind of trying to put out rallies as they come up. So the other teams are slinging that ball around, getting a lot of yards in garbage time. You know, I went back and forth on this. Yes, Tampa has the advantage of being at home, but the limited fan base, well, you know, it's not really going to be that big of a deal, I don't think. I am going to take Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs.
Okay.
I think their offense is really good. To me, the Chiefs' biggest weakness this year has been they haven't been able to step on people's throats and kind of put them away. I think the Chiefs are going to score points, but the reason they're going to win this game is not their offense. I think Tyrann Mathieu and Sorensen and Chris Jones and those playmakers on that defense are going to force a timely Brady interception, and the Chiefs are going to roll for 2 Super Bowls in a row, the first to repeat since 2003-2004. And oh, who did that? Oh, yeah, Tom Brady and the Patriots. I just think the Chiefs, it's their time.
There's so many storylines that can arise from this matchup. And then you have Gronk versus Kelsey, two of the most legendary.
Another old versus new. Yeah.
Yep, two of the most legendary NFL tight ends we've seen. I will say that neither team is really super efficient at running the ball. This is going to be an old school, well, maybe not even old school, but a new school, aired out, who can stretch the field. That's who's going to win the game. Because both teams, they have decent running backs, but they don't have prolific rushing attacks by any means. I do think, Zach, the reason why I'm taking Tampa here is because of the Fisher injury. That's their number one tackle. That's their number one offensive lineman. I think Shaq Barrett's going to be able to wreak havoc and cause some pressure. We saw how elite Tampa's pass rush has been throughout these playoffs, and losing your best tackle going into a Super Bowl matchup, that just scares me. It really does.
You're absolutely right. That could be a huge problem for that offensive front for Kansas City. Patrick Mahomes is going to join that elite club of Eli Manning and Nick Foles to beat Brady in a Super Bowl.
I really hope that Tom Brady doesn't win, because then he would have more Super Bowl rings than my beloved Steelers have as a franchise in totality. So do I want to see it happen? No, but as a betting man, it's hard to go against Tom Brady.
What would be worse?
Historically, if you bet on Tom Brady, you've probably done pretty well if you bet on him throughout his entire career.
What would be worse as a Steeler fan? I want you to put your mind into full Steeler man fandom here. What is worse, Tom Brady winning his 7th Super Bowl or Antonio Brown winning a Super Bowl ring?
Antonio Brown, I would say. Because I can chalk it up and be like, okay, well, it's Tom Brady, the greatest player of all time. And yes, I'm not just saying quarterback, greatest player of all time. You heard it here first. But with how Antonio Brown treated the Steelers franchise and the absolute headache he was in the locker room, I don't want to see Antonio Brown be successful. And call me being spiteful, that would be more difficult to watch, even though theoretically I'm picking it to happen.
Yeah, I'm a fan of redemption stories, and I think that you and me are both pulling for Antonio Brown to hoist Lombardi.
Don't put words in my mouth.
Also, Dalton said his opinion of Tom Brady as being the greatest football player ever. That does not speak for both of us.
Okay. Who would you put above him?
I think that if you had a NFL draft for history, that you could put any player in history. Yes, Tom Brady makes total sense from the quarterback position. To me, I think there is one name on defense, and I think you could make the argument for Jerry Rice on offense to go ahead of Brady, just because Jerry Rice dominated for so long. But I think if I had the first pick in a NFL history draft, I'm taking Lawrence Taylor. Lawrence Taylor was the most dominant defensive force in history. Obviously, some of that may or may not have been cocaine-induced, cocaine-fueled, whatever you want to call it. But you go back, all you need to do, besides look up videos, is look up what Bill Belichick says about him. They were talking a few years ago, somebody was talking about Khalil Mack, and they were like, yeah, so, Khalil Mack's in that Lawrence Taylor category, and Belichick goes, whoa. We're talking about Lawrence Taylor. Khalil Mack is a fantastic player, top 5 player in the league, but we're talking about Lawrence Taylor here. Nobody is even in that category.
Yeah. And you could call me partial, Zach. I would throw Mean Joe Green on that list. Had Mean Joe Green stayed healthy his entire career, he probably would have been the greatest defender of all time. He actually played with injuries for more than 7 seasons and still put up the type of numbers that he did and was still an absolute force rushing the passer.
Joe Green did a fine Coke commercial. Lawrence Taylor was Lawrence Taylor.
I'm not arguing with that. If I had an NFL history draft, I would take Tom Brady. Most valuable position, best quarterback of all time, best player of all time.
So I am on the other side of this, and I'm glad you brought this up because we talk about Deshaun Watson going to these teams and maybe going to the Jets and everything. I just cannot get enough of the way that San Francisco has done and built their team. They obviously have a ton of injuries this year, played in the Super Bowl last year. They built their teams from the trenches out. They had a dominant defensive line, still do. We'll see if those guys can come back healthy. A great back 7 with linebackers and just a good solid set of corners there. So the defense is there. They had a good offensive line, some good running backs, a couple of good wide receivers. And Jimmy Garoppolo hasn't been great, yes, but they built their teams from the trenches out. I don't think that gets near enough credit. Did they win the Super Bowl last year? No, they did not. But they still went 13-3 and went to the Super Bowl. And they are still poised for success. And if Aaron Rodgers goes to the 49ers next year, you can write Lombardi in San Francisco because that is all they're missing. I understand that this is a quarterback-driven league, and yes, they have a lot of success, but I think for the future of a team, I think you have a lot better chance of success than, say, if Patrick Mahomes gets hurt, if Brady throws some bad interceptions. If that defense is there and you have a good offensive line, I will take that every time, as opposed to having an Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay and having very limited resources around him to win, because Aaron Rodgers has only won one Super Bowl. They've lost in the NFC Championship 2 years in a row. It's just face facts that you can only be so good when the quarterback is there and everything else around him is a step below. I know that sounds crazy, but look at Brady all those years with those crazy good defenses with Teddy Bruschi and all those Patriot defenses in the early 2000s when they had their 3 Super Bowl wins in 4 years, things like that. I think a good quarterback is just as important as a defense. I don't think that gets enough credit.
You make an interesting argument, and here's where I would refute that, Zach. So having an elite defense is important. Absolutely it is. You can win a lot of games that way. But the thing is, if you don't have an elite quarterback, you can't win Super Bowls. That's been proven time and time again. Sure, San Francisco's made it to the Super Bowl twice. They did it under the Harbaugh era, and they did it now with Jimmy Garoppolo. But without having that elite signal caller, they weren't able to get it done. You put Tom Brady on that San Francisco roster, they win a ton of Super Bowls. Having a franchise elite quarterback makes a difference.
It does.
You can only get so far and have a mediocre quarterback. It is not possible to win a Super Bowl with a mediocre quarterback.
You
especially in
have
today's
just
NFL.
Put your foot in your mouth. Joe Flacco won a Super Bowl. Trent Dilfer won a Super Bowl.
Okay, that's fair. But to me, Flacco actually played at an elite level during those playoffs and in the Super Bowl. He had a career year and was very serviceable. That is a good point that you make, though. But
you're going to tell me Trent Dilfer played at an elite level? You're going to tell me Jeff Hostetler for the Giants the year Phil Simms got hurt played at an elite level? Yes, it 100% helps to have an elite quarterback. But Jim McMahon, Jeff Hostetler, and some of these other teams did not have elite quarterbacks. Doug Williams was not an elite quarterback. He was a very good one for the Washington Redskins, but they have won Super Bowls without elite quarterbacks. Does it help? Absolutely. But you cannot sit here and tell me that you have to have one to win a Super Bowl. Peyton Manning, in the year that they won it with the Broncos, was the worst quarterback in the league. We all know that Brock Osweiler led them for the regular season. Peyton kind of jumped in there at the last minute and threw for like 40-something yards in the Super Bowl. I mean, it was more than that, but it was very bad. That defense won that Super Bowl.
That's fair. But you have some quarterbacks that are just so talented that they can single-handedly win you a Lombardi trophy. And if you combine those types of players on an even top 10 defense, you see what happened with Brady and his crew.
Okay, I'll say this. I think it's more often that a team wins without an elite quarterback than a quarterback wins without a good or elite defense. Name me one of those.
You mentioned your guy, Eli Manning, all the time. He played at an elite level, single-handedly won the Giants their Super Bowls. Tom Brady.
Very few.
Tom Brady
always had an elite defense.
Not true. There were some years that they were more middle of the road statistically. They weren't always a top 10 defense by any means. And he also had like 0 weapons on offense half the time that he won Super Bowls.
You don't think Gronkowski is a weapon?
Joe Montana. Gronk was, yes, but he had no receivers.
You don't think Joe Montana had a good defense?
Yeah, but Joe Montana also carried him. Steve Young.
You don't think they had good defenses?
Brett Favre.
Hey, there are few. But
Drew
Brett
Brees.
Favre also... Hold on
Drew
now.
Brees.
Brett Favre had Reggie White. Drew Brees, they had an opportunistic defense. They had some...
That basically means they had a shitty defense, but every once in a while they played okay.
Okay, I'm just saying, it has happened. But... They are.
Well, you asked me to name examples, so I started giving you some examples.
I didn't say examples. I said there are more.
We'd have to go back and look at it. I would be very interested to see where that ended up.
Okay, well, that 84 49ers team had 5 defensive players that were Pro Bowlers that year. So, yeah, they didn't have a good defense. They only had Ronnie Lott back there, who's a Hall of Famer. I mean, come on. Yes, there are arguments out there.
Yeah, but without Montana, they wouldn't have won 4. They might have won 1.
Maybe not 4, but they were 15-1 in 1984. They were the only team, we've talked about this, that won a Super Bowl with 15 wins in the regular season.
So let's go back to this Super Bowl matchup, Zach. I think we pretty much touched on everything, but would you be surprised to see Tom Brady win another Super Bowl?
Would I be surprised? Not at all. not at all.
Regardless, the storylines from this are going to be legendary. It's shaping up to be an incredible matchup. The worst part is, though, after this episode, this is the last week we get to talk about football for a while. So let's enjoy it, and we'll keep the good content rolling.
That's right. So we've covered some football, so let's move into some hockey.
So puck me, Jake Muzzin lifted a puck onto Matthew Tkachuk's lap. And then afterwards, Tkachuk skated full steam ahead to Muzzin and then tried to fight him. And then the worst part was he got his ass kicked and threw a complete temper tantrum. Looked like he was going to have an aneurysm on the bench overall. And then the Flames also ended up losing the game 4-3. So legendary move for Muzzin, embarrassing for Tkachuk, and overall funny hockey moment.
It was. I saw this. My best friend's dad actually sent me a video of this, and I was laughing because, Tkachuk's kind of got that role as a pest. Really scores some points, but loves to get under the opposition's skin, and Muzzin's known as a bigger, tougher guy. So kind of wild, kind of funny. You never really see these guys lose their composure like that, but it was funny to see.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a veteran move, too. Jake Muzzin's been around the league for a while. He knew when to push buttons, and the best part was he won the fight. So Tkachuk really looked like an idiot in this entire situation.
That's right. That's right. My puck me this week is easy because after the Rangers lost to the Penguins on Saturday, my decision was made. So let me tell you how the Penguins beat the Rangers. So going into overtime, 3-on-3
hockey IQ.
Very crazy. 3-on-3 hockey is always crazy. So the puck goes behind the net, and Tony DeAngelo is at the back of the trapezoid there, kind of going behind the net to get the puck. And then Georgiev, the Rangers goalie, comes out, does not know he's there, and pokes the puck away. Crosby gets it. 5 seconds later, they score for the overtime winner. So after that happens, they go back through the tunnel after they're coming off the ice, and apparently Alexander Georgiev and Tony DeAngelo were having words about whose responsibility it was. They were shouting and everything. Apparently, DeAngelo swung at Gio, missed him, and apparently Chris Kreider saw this and just laid Tony DeAngelo out. So Tony DeAngelo has been placed on waivers. Nobody claimed him. Jeff Gorton, the Rangers general manager, has said he has played his last game for the New York Rangers. So, and what sucks is I like Tony D. He was a gritty, smaller guy. He had some offensive skill. He hadn't really played
he had like 54 points last year, which made the Rangers give him a huge contract extension in the offseason.
Yeah, like $4.5 million. It sucks. He's kind of gotten a lot of hot water for his political tweets and other things like that. And, it kind of sucks. I think he's a really good young defenseman. I think he's got a bright future. He's going to do okay if another team will give him a chance. He brought this on himself. And I will say this, I think Chris Kreider deserves the captaincy for laying out and protecting one of his teammates and quelling this. That's leadership, Dalton. If that's not leadership, I don't know what is.
Yeah, it is. The most fascinating part to me about this entire situation is Georgiev. Why is he not being punished at all? He did start it. He shoved DeAngelo. No one's talking about that.
Now, there are rumors to say different things happened, but some people are just putting these pieces together, some of these famous sports writers. And, supposedly some of them are saying that Georgiev did not start it, that DeAngelo came up and him yelling, and he kind of pushed him there. So who knows? Obviously, something transpired with everybody seeing it there for DeAngelo to get punished and Gio to not get punished. So something's up. We may never know, but pretty interesting.
Yeah. So, Zach, you brought up Sidney Crosby scoring that overtime goal, which is a perfect segue to one of the storylines I had in the NHL. So on 31st, when all of this transpired, Crosby, McDavid, and Ovechkin all scored overtime goals within 5 minutes of each other for their teams. And this was the first time in history that 3 number 1 overall picks have scored game-winning goals. Pretty crazy.
Yeah, you had to go deep in the well for that one. This might, also the first time in history I walked outside pantless today.
Hey, it's a cool stat of the week. I'm a stats guy. The listeners, they needed to know this one.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll give you that. A couple of things going on in the league right now. So just some storylines here for you. So Jim Rutherford, the Penguins GM, has stepped down. Rumors are circulating after he stepped down that he tried to trade Chris Letang. and was floating Evgeny Malkin's name out on the market. Dalton, what do you think about this? We were actually just kind of talking about this a week or two ago about what the Penguins could do to keep that window open. You know, you had said you would rather them trade Chris Letang as opposed to Evgeny Malkin. Looks like Jim Rutherford was on your train.
Yeah, I did say that initially, but as the season goes along, I'm starting to agree with you more that it needed to be Malkin, because Malkin looks old and slow right now. It looks like he can hardly move on ice. He's not putting effort in. And there has been times in Malkin's career where he can be a little bit lazy. So I don't know if it's an attitude problem or if he's just played a lot of games and the gas is starting to wear off. But as a Penguins fan, this really does pain me because Jim Rutherford obviously won us 2 Stanley Cups. I am extremely grateful for all the accomplishments that he's done. And it definitely leaves the Pens in a tough season, having to try to, rally around losing their general manager and one of the guys that the entire franchise respected. Now, the one thing about this is when Jim Rutherford was first brought on as the Penguins general manager, he's up there in age anyway, and he really wasn't wanting to be a GM for more than a couple of years. But when you start winning Stanley Cups, that could probably change things. To me, he's one of the greatest general managers I've seen. People also forget that he won the Carolina Hurricanes their first Stanley Cup. So the guy's had a lot of success overall, but I can see why Pens fans would be mad about Letang. But honestly, trading Malkin would be smart right now.
You said something that I completely agree with. The Rangers have played the Penguins 4 times this year. Man, Evgeny Malkin does not look anything like himself. He looks slow. He looks out of shape. He looks lazy. He did not make any plays on the puck that I can remember over these last 4 games. And just thinking at the game last night, there was a play where the Rangers were kind of coming down the ice, probably neutral zone. It looked like Evgeny Malkin poked at the puck and didn't get it from right off the faceoff dot, and it was like, oh, well, I guess I'll just go over here for a change, and just slowly skated over to the bench. He just doesn't look like himself.
Yeah, and he's been turning the puck over a lot, which I've noticed, and it's been extremely infuriating to watch. Zach, what I'll say, though, is if the Penguins' leadership and their franchise really pushed Jim Rutherford out for talking about trading Letang and Malkin, that, to me, is disgraceful. Why do they not have faith in a guy that won them back-to-back Stanley Cups and has never missed the postseason under his tenure? Sure, you have to know about Jim Rutherford that he's a wheeler and dealer. He'll trade anyone at any given time. Some of his trades hit, some of them don't. But at the end of the day, he has elevated the Penguins and made them Stanley Cup contenders every single year under his tenure. So if he got pushed out and it wasn't just him stepping down, Penguins franchise ought to be embarrassed.
Yeah, I mean, something's up. Something's rotten in Denmark, as one brilliant poet writer once said.
Yeah. So also, Connor McDavid scored his first hat trick of the NHL season, and that is the first hat trick we've seen all year. McDavid's been on a tear, Zach. We'll get into him a little bit later, but it's been impressive to watch so far.
That's right. Yeah, it looks like him and Leon Draisaitl are finally kicking into gear, and they're going to have to for them to have any kind of hope at a postseason run.
Yep. Once again, the Oilers in goaltending, they can't find anyone consistent. Don't know what it is, but that is a cursed team to play for a goalie.
It's a black hole.
Absolutely. So, Zach, how much does the shortened season affect Ovechkin's chance to break Gretzky's goal record? I find this to be interesting because theoretically before the season he was on pace and had a chance to do it, but now that he can only play 56 games, is it even possible anymore?
So let's look at this. So Ovi is 35. We obviously know that he is playing for a very competitive team there in Washington. They're going to be good. They have a lot of points. We'll get into that in just a few minutes. He's got 2 goals through 6 games this year. I think it's not the biggest thing in the world because he's obviously going to have at least 1 or 2 more good opportunities to have full Ovi seasons. We'll see, but I wouldn't write it off just yet to think he's not going to get it.
Yeah. The guy is easily the best goal scorer of our generation, and perhaps the puck falls right. Maybe he'll be the greatest goal scorer of all time.
Scored a lot of goals sitting over there on the left point in the power
play. Which is crazy. Absolutely crazy to think about because most people before Ovechkin considered Gretzky's goal record to be unbreakable.
Yeah,
especially in an era for the most part where scoring as a whole has been down.
For sure. It's definitely a lot harder to score now than it was in the late 70s and early 80s, but we'll see. I think Ovi's got a little bit of time to do it.
Okay. So we're going to introduce a new segment. Zach, let's play Hot or Not. So what we're going to do on this segment is go through teams a week, and Zach and I are going to rotate, and we're going to tell you whether they're hot or they're not, whether you need to swipe right or you need to swipe left. So Zach, first team for you, the Ottawa Senators. Are they hot or are they not?
Gosh, you can't see me, but I'm shaking. I'm so cold over here. Brr. Ottawa is not hot. Through 9 games, they have 3 points. They have 1 win, 7 losses, and 1 overtime loss. So that's bad. We know that. Nobody's discrepant that. But a minus 22 goal differential, yeesh. They've got some talent, young talent with Stutzel and those guys. Matt Murray looks like he's kind of struggling again, but Ottawa is not hot. Dalton, the Boston Bruins.
The bad boy Bruins are 6-1-2 over their last 10 games. The Bees are back. They're rolling. They're on another level. They packed the car at the stadium. They're rolling around in their Mercedes-Benz. Bruins are scorching, and they're one of the hottest teams. You need to swipe right on them. The Bees have it going.
Hey, just for future reference, anytime you're ever going to speak with a Boston accent again, please just give me a hand signal so I can shut my headphones off. I don't ever want to hear that again.
Hey, my mom's from New Hampshire, so I have a little bit of firsthand experience.
Yeah.
So, Zach, the Dallas Stars, where are they at?
En fuego, as some would say in Spanish. The Dallas Stars have played 6 games. They have a 4-1-1 record. And oh, by the way, they are pashing the Blue Jackets tonight 5-1, getting scoring from everywhere. Joe Pavelski scored his 6th goal and his 7th goal tonight. I mean, they are just crushing it. They are on fire. Swipe right, the Dallas Stars. All right, well, I guess by bias, I couldn't do this one. The New York Rangers, Dalton.
It actually just happened to fall this way. The Rangers right now, to me, are the Nickelback of the NHL. They're decent sometimes. Some of the games, they look okay, like they could have something going, but really, overall, they're kind of just middle of the road right now. 3-4-2. Yeah, they beat the Penguins last night, but basically, they're the Nickelback of the NHL.
The only thing I will say is that they have been in every game that they have played in down to the wire, except for the first game against the Islanders, which they lost 4-0, but I digress. Dalton, we got your favorite team, and I mean your absolute favorite team next. Talk to me about how much you love the Philadelphia Flyers.
So, I'll put my bias aside because it pains me to admit this. The Flyers are absolutely heating up right now. They're the Blake Lively of the NHL. They're scorching hot. They've won 4 games in a row. Yes, they have the Bruins, who completely dominated them earlier, but 4-game win streak, top of the East Division, the best division in the NHL. Swipe right on the Flyers.
On the Flyers.
So we have the San Jose Sharks, a team of, you could say, washed-up veterans. Zach, are these old guys, are they still hot? Or where are these old guys at right now?
Yeah, I'm afraid that you swipe left. This is kind of the older opposite sex that you see on Tinder. You're like, oh goodness, I hope somebody takes care of them. They are not hot. They are 3-5 on the year, minus 9 goal differential. But most importantly, they are DFL out west. Erik Karlsson and these guys, Thomas Hertl, they just as much talent as they do have left in the tank. They are just not able to tote the bread. I'm going to swipe left on the San Jose Sharks. Dalton, we're going to end up here with the Edmonton Oilers. You want to tell me hot or not?
Well, if I could take 2 players on their entire team, I would say that they're hot. But because they're a mediocre 5-6, they're somewhere in the middle. You know, you don't swipe right, you don't swipe left. You keep them open. You look and see, okay, would I consider it? Are they good? Are they bad? They're somewhere in the middle. You don't swipe right, you don't swipe left. You really don't know what to do with them at that point.
So Dalton, kind of moving on. We've gone through a hot or not, so let's talk about some league standings here. So out in the East, we've got Philadelphia leading the way alongside the Washington Capitals at 15 points. Right up behind them is the Boston Bruins with 14 points. Pittsburgh is actually in a playoff spot right now in the 4th spot.
You say actually like you're surprised by it.
I mean, actually, like a minus 7 goal differential probably ain't going to last too much longer, but we'll see. New Jersey and Buffalo are right at 10 points, and the Islanders and the Rangers, both the New York City teams, that is, coming up with 8 points. We'll see. So a little surprise in the Central, Dalton. We've obviously got the Tampa Bay Lightning at 11, but Florida and Columbus has actually tracked them down. Florida's actually 5-0-1, quietly the hottest team in the league. Pretty cool to see there. Carolina also in that fourth playoff spot with 10 points. Dallas only played 6 games, but are 4-1-1, just outside that playoff line at 9 points, tied with Chicago at 9 points. Nashville really struggling of late, 4-5, only 8 points, and Detroit is down there in the cellar in the Central with 6 points. Out west, we've got the St. Louis Blues, who have tied the Colorado Avalanche with 13 points. The Minnesota Wild are in third place with 12 points. The Vegas Golden Knights have 11. Your Kings have 8 points alongside the Ducks. Arizona really struggling with 7 points, 3-4-1. They really need to get it going. San Jose in the cellar there with 6 points, and up in the Great White North Division, pretty cutthroat for first. Toronto in at 15. They're 7-2-1. Montreal really coming on strong with that plus 15 goal differential. They are 6-1-2 for 14 points. Vancouver really making strides, really making me look good. Jumped back up to having 12 points. Winnipeg has 11 points. Edmonton with 10 points, Calgary with 9, and Ottawa with 3. It's good teams there. We're starting to kind of see some of those top-tier teams in these divisions pull away from these middle-tier teams. But, we still got plenty of hockey left, so it should be fun.
Yeah, you mentioned Florida. It is crazy. They are the only undefeated team in the NHL. Only team without a loss. I know they have one overtime loss, but overall, they haven't lost in regulation. Now, they have only played Chicago, Detroit, and Columbus, so their strength of schedule hasn't been too difficult so far. But I'll be interested to see. They have a series against the Predators coming up to kind of see where they land in this division. Are they real?
Yeah.
Or has playing Chicago and Detroit really helped?
It has. But one thing I will say is Coach Quenneville, after being ousted out of Chicago a few years ago, he's got Florida playing well, and that's cool to see, man. They've got some talent down there. Jonathan Huberdeau, all those guys. We'll see if this can last.
Yeah. So the North Division, Zach, seems very cutthroat right now. Do you think the North Division is more competitive than the East at this point?
I don't. It is, it's very competitive for first and second. I think Montreal and Toronto are fighting for that first and second spot, but I think that they will kind of separate themselves. To me, in the East, you got Philly, Washington, and Boston. All are really good, really full of depth teams with plenty of scoring, good defense, good goaltending. And I think there's going to be a three-way battle for that top spot. And then you're going to have that second tier with Pittsburgh, the Devils, Buffalo, New York, and the Islanders to try to find that fourth wildcard spot. I just think the East is so cutthroat. Yeah,
it is. And especially if you look at Ottawa, they're 1-7, whereas you have in the East, the team in last place is the Rangers, who are still 3-4-2 and have been competitive all year. It is a very cutthroat division. It's been crazy to watch so far. Washington's really surprised me overall. They've been rolling. Boston had a big come-from-behind win last night. Pastrnak being back's really helped elevate that team overall. It was cool to see, Chara got the better of the Bees the game before, but the Bruins are starting to look pretty hot. Zach, are you sold on Montreal making the playoffs now? I've been trying to tell you. They look good. They look like one of the best teams in the NHL.
You have Jeff Petry's been lighting the lamp. Jonathan Drouin. These guys are playing well. Carey Price is really playing well.
Nick Suzuki. That guy's been prolific.
Yeah. I'm going to hold off. Hold off still. I think that they're a very good team. Are you in denial right now? Is that what's happening? No, I just think that I've seen this story before, especially being a Ranger fan, with you put your hopes solely on the back of a goaltender, and he can only do so much. Now, with this shortened year, it's very possible. But I just think that they're going to wear down at some point. We'll see.
Yeah, but they have two good goaltenders. Jake Allen's honestly probably played a little bit better than Carey Price has so far.
I understand that, but we'll see. They've gotten off to some really good starts over the past 10 years, too. It kind of faltered. They did make it to the Conference Championship in 2014, but we'll see. I'm going to hold off judgment just a little bit longer before I make my decision, but they're playing well. Can't deny that.
So out west, Colorado has lost a ton of their stars. McKinnon's going to be week to week. How do you think that's going to impact them? Because the Stars finally look like they've kind of found their groove. And they've had some really hot goaltending with Grubauer. And they've definitely climbed up the rankings. But is this loss of McKinnon going to impact them?
Anytime you lose your 1A guy, it hurts. It'd be like if Sidney Crosby went down. Do they have a lot of other talent? Yeah. But but they're going to really need to step up. These depth guys like Brendan Saad, Nazem Kadri, Andre Burakovsky, they're going to have to step up. We're going to have to see some from them to kind of tote this spread until McKinnon can come back. We'll see. I think that one thing that is going to help Colorado is that they're in that West Division that is going to have those weaker teams like the Kings, the Ducks, the Sharks. And I think that Minnesota is going to kind of fall back to earth any minute now. So I think that's going to help them. But you're right. For them to be where they want to be, they need all their horses running.
Yeah. Minnesota, Zach, has the 32nd power play in the league. They've converted a power play goal on 2% of their opportunities. And yet, somehow, they're still in third place in the division. There is no way this success is sustainable. I really don't get it, especially if you look at their statistics.
No, it's not sustainable. They are playing very well for a good hockey team that needs to blow it up. But to me, this is probably worst case scenario for the Wild. They're right there where they have a chance to make some moves to kind of get younger, get faster. And now this kind of delays that because they're playing at a decent level. I will say this, Vladimir Tarasenko is finally skating on his own again. Still no timetable for his return with the St. Louis Blues, but man, that Blues offense is scoring some goals. Just think when they get Tarasenko back.
Yeah, and Jordan Binnington's really bounced back. I know we were very critical about him earlier on one of our other podcasts, but we've seen him bounce back, and I know you brought up a good point with the Blues. You said if Binnington can turn into his elite form, the Blues are going to be absolutely dangerous, and you're really not going to be able to beat them overall just with how much talent they have. So we've seen Binnington turn the corner, which was good to see because he definitely got off to a really shaky start.
They're winning despite of their goaltending. Now, like you said, he's 5-1-1 this year. He's got a 918 save percentage. Not elite, but it's okay. If he can get that up in the low 20s there, man, they could be really good. But, I mean, the guys winning games, 2.49 is not going to get it done goals against average. But we'll see. Like I said, they've got the offense. They've got really good pieces of defense. Torrey Krug, Barbashev, Parayko, Mike Hoffman, these guys have plenty of talent back there. I forgot Justin Falk's actually in St. Louis, another really good defenseman. This team has a ton of talent. It's just the fact of can the goaltending hold up? And if it can, look out.
Yeah. I still think Colorado should be the favorite to win this division, but it's definitely a very top-heavy division overall with Vegas, St. Louis, and Colorado. The fourth team that gets in, that's the biggest question mark.
I wouldn't count out Vegas. I know you said you think Colorado's the favorite. Vegas is good.
They are. They're 5-1-1 right now. They've definitely been on a tear to start out the season. It's weird to follow the standings this year because we have so many COVID setbacks. It's hard to gauge. You have to look at the amount of games played compared to points that they have. So it's really tough to evaluate the standings overall because everyone's games played is drastically different.
That's right. So, Dalton, moving into some league leaders here. We got Connor McDavid leading the whole league in points with 22 points. Leon Draisaitl was right behind him at 21, which is pretty wild. Two teammates there. Brock Boeser and Connor McDavid are tied with 8 goals. Leon Draisaitl has the league lead with 15 helpers. And I thought an interesting stat to throw at you here was time on ice per game. You want to take a guess of who's number one? It makes sense if you think about it.
Ryan McDonough.
No.
Okay, who is it?
It is Drew Doughty, 27.39 points per game.
You got to admit the McDonough guess was probably a pretty good guess.
Absolutely. I love me some Ryan McDonough, one of the best shutdown defensemen in the league.
Yeah. Do you want to go into that trade a little bit about how bad that worked out for the Rangers? All of the players they got in return from that package, none of them are even top 6 defensemen or top 4 forwards. That deal's looking worse and worse every single year.
I agree. I hated it when it happened. And let's not forget who the other player in that trade was. It was JT Miller, who had more than a point per game last year in Vancouver. I hated that trade when it happened. I remember checking my phone there on the trade deadline day, and it got past the deadline of 3 p.m., and I was like, yes, it didn't happen. And then it looked like the late trades were coming in. And, man, you're right. And I said it when it happened. The Rangers were going to struggle on defense. Henrik Lundqvist's decline was clouded by Ryan McDonough being so good back there. I mean, Sidney Crosby and Ovechkin both said it themselves. They hated when he guarded them, and I think the ultimate compliment was when the NHL did the all-star deal where they had 3-on-3, and it was Ovechkin, Crosby, and McDonough. Crosby said this was awesome. He said me and Ovechkin could just go score goals because we knew nobody was going to score. I thought that was awesome.
McDonough, to me, is a Hall of Famer, Zach, and I think he was one of the most important reasons why the Lightning were finally able to get over that hump. His veteran leadership. So. Hedman gets all of the glory in Tampa, but I think McDonough's the better defenseman.
McDonough says, look, you go score the goals. I got this end of the ice. I mean, like you said, nobody did a better job for all those years on John Tavares, on Claude Giroux, on Sidney Crosby, on Alex Ovechkin. I mean, he played against 4 of the best players in the league all the time. And then in 2015, when the Rangers lost to the Tampa Bay Lightning in the conference finals, he held Steven Stamkos to 0 points the last 3 games on a broken foot. I mean, the guy was
that's ridiculous.
He's just fantastic. I will sit here and just tell you, when they won the Cup last year, I stayed up and watched them do the skate just so I could see him hoist that cup because he deserved it. I don't necessarily know if he's a Hall of Famer. You know, I think his offensive output is his main knock, and I completely understand that. But as a true blue defenseman who is supposed to shut somebody down, you're not going to get better than Ryan McDonough.
Yeah, he's a rare breed. I think the only person you might be able to compare him to in the current NHL is maybe Tom Wilson, but still McDonough's in a league of his own. Some goalies that are pulling their best Patrick Waugh impersonations. Pete Mrazek, .955 save percentage. Marc-Andre Fleury, .951. Mackenzie Blackwood, .948. Now keep in mind, these 3 guys have had less starts than some of the other goaltenders on this list, but when they've been in net, they've been absolutely elite. Jonas Korpisalo, another guy that's been a huge difference maker for Columbus with a .936 save percentage. And then for goals against average, you have the same similar names. Pete Mrazek, .99 points a game. Marc-Andre Fleury, 1 goal allowed a game. Jake Allen, 1.68 goals allowed per game. And Yaroslav Halak, 1.72 goals allowed per game. So there's a lot of goaltenders off to hot starts right now. And then we've seen some goaltenders that both Tristan Jarry and Casey DeSmith can't even post above an .875 save percentage. So,
well, you know,
it's been the fact that the Penguins are still winning games right now is ridiculous because Jarry, and I know Matt Murray definitely has gone downhill fast, but I think a lot of it has to do with Ottawa's defense. But still, Tristan Jarry is really not even the starter at this point. They're playing DeSmith more, and neither of the guys can have above a .900 save percentage. It's ridiculous.
We've talked about this. Patrick Waugh in his prime could have played in Ottawa, and they wouldn't have succeeded there. I mean, they're just not that good, and it's not going to help Matt Murray, who had confidence issues last year, very much. But you're right. I think that forward group is toting the bread right now for the Penguins. I think Gensel, I think Russ, I think, you know, those guys are really helping out offensively. Kasperi Kapanen is, you know, playing well, but they have to. If they don't score 3 goals a game, they're not going to win. I mean, you look, especially with Letang kind of being on the iffy with the injured bug right now. I think that they're going to have to get some goaltending.
Yeah.
Well, you know.
Zach, 2 MVPs, though, for the Penguins for me, guys that don't get enough credit. Jason Zucker and John Marino.
Yeah, Marino really impressed me. He's a good young player.
Yeah. The Penguins' defense is actually pretty solid. If they could get decent goaltending, they'll be all right. I know Jim Rutherford, who now resigned, used a lot of assets and tools to revamp that blue line.
He did well, and I'm very happy that a very good, talented general manager is now not in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, we'll see who the next guy is.
So, Dalton, finishing up here, got some player spotlights for you. So, this past week, Thatcher Demko for the Vancouver Canucks went 3-0. Gave up 1 goal per game, helping Vancouver really bounce back and get some rolling wheels going on that train. Leon Draisaitl had 12 points in his last 4 games, including a 6-assist night against Ottawa on January 31st. 6 points, which is phenomenal. That's NHL 21 hockey game numbers.
Draisaitl, honestly, the last 2 or 3 seasons has put up very comparable numbers to McDavid. He doesn't get enough credit. He is one of the best offensive weapons in the NHL right now, and he gets overshadowed by McDavid. But honestly, it's hard to argue that one is that more superior than the other right now with how Draisaitl's looked the last couple of years.
Yeah, boy, when Connor McDavid goes to Toronto in about 3 years, Draisaitl's going to have that whole team to himself. Nah, I'm just kidding. But you're right, Draisaitl is a fantastic player, and I think that it's hard to imagine where Edmonton would be. You know, they've just name chased. They got Tyson Barrie and some of these other guys, and Barrie has played okay, but they have just completely given up on the young up and coming through their system. It seems like Edmonton, especially being a mid-tier market, they have got to rely on those young, hungry, cheap players that come up through the organization. And it just seems like they either have gotten away from it a little bit, or maybe there's not that many that they haven't done a good enough job of putting those players in the organization. And I think that, if one or the other were gone, if it was just a one-trick pony there in Edmonton, they could be really bad. Obviously, they put up a lot of points with that, one player, but they could be really bad. Transitioning from Draisaitl right into McDavid, he's my other player spotlight this week. He's had 12 points in his last 4 games as well. 5 points against Ottawa the other night as well. Just like 24 points in a combined 8 games for these players.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. It's hard to argue. McDavid, to me, Zach, right now is the best player in the NHL. I think he kind of got that crown a couple of years ago and really just run away with it at this point. He proves it week in and week out. There's a lot of good players in the NHL, but even as someone who loves Sidney Crosby, McDavid's the best player in the league.
I agree.
So, my first player spotlight, I got Johnny Hockey in the Calgary Flames. He's on an 8-game point streak right now, and he scored a shootout winner over the Jets last night to help them win the game. He has 3 goals in his last 5 games, and he has 12 points overall, which is good. I mean, you can't compare it to guys like McDavid and Draisaitl, but the 8-game point streak to me has been very impressive. And then in net, a goaltender I want to talk about is Philip Grubauer. He's 4-1 in his last 5 games with a shutout over San Jose. Grubauer has had 2 games that were kind of shaky, but other than that, the guy's been rock solid. And I said it last year when I was doing my NHL playoffs. If Grubauer plays, he is Colorado's #1 goaltender. He's elevated himself to that position, and he, to me, is a goalie, Zach, that doesn't get nearly the recognition that he deserves.
True. All that talent in Colorado really makes it difficult for him to get the spotlight. But boy, yeah, you throw some elite talent on some depth with a good goaltender, man, you can have a really good team.
Yep. So my last player, and one of our loyal listeners is going to appreciate this because he is a Bruins douchebag. Went over and watched the game with him when the Penguins lost to him. That was rough. But I'm going to give some credit to the Bruins here. I hate doing this, but this is for him. So,
sounds like you lost a bet.
No, I didn't lose a bet. Just some dignity. Brad Marchand, my third player spotlight. 4 goals, 8 points in the last 5 games. And these are also against good defensive teams so far in Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and Washington. Marchand has been absolutely dangerous this season. And now that Pasternak's back, the Bruins are rolling. And I had them as one of my Stanley Cup favorites. I know when we talked about the 4 teams that we could see winning it. And Marchand is one of the main reasons why I have them there.
Yeah, I agree. Just a ton of offensive talent there in Boston. However, I will not, and I will piss off that relative Boston fan here. I just don't think that they can make a deep run or climb the mountain because Tuukka Rask is in net back there. I just think he's too prone to mood swings and slumps, and I just think one bad bounce can just derail the whole thing.
Yeah, but Tuukka Rask is the reason why the Bruins made it to the Stanley Cup on their last run.
Sure.
And I know people want to go ahead and blame him for the Game 7 loss, but had he won that, he probably would have won the Conn Smythe. And if you had to give someone a playoff MVP, it would have been him for his play overall. He had one somewhat suspect game, but overall, Rask carried the Bruins through the playoffs.
I agree, but I think you answered your own question. He did not win it, and they lost that Game 7. And, I just think that he's a very good goaltender. Nobody could ever question his talent. He has tremendous talent. It is all in between his ears and just kind of staying level-headed. Look, I'll be honest with you. Goalies are very, they're kind of like pitchers a lot in a way because you have to be very careful with how you handle them. If you give them the hook, you may shatter their confidence. You put them on the bench, they may start second-guessing themselves. You got to be very careful with goalies, but he has not been able to do it yet. It's kind of one of those things to me, and I say this a lot on the show, but I'm a prove it to me guy. He's going to have to prove it to me that he can do it.
Yeah, I see where you're getting at, but overall, I think Rask carries the Bruins more than he hurts them. They got eliminated last year without Rask, and I know Bruins fans were pissed that he, took the playoffs off. But in 2019, when they made a run to the Stanley Cup, it was because of Tuukka Rask.
Would you rather have Tuukka Rask or Andre Vasilevsky?
Probably Rask. Vasilevsky's had one good year. Everyone gives him a lot of love, but you got to think, you have Victor Hedman and McDonough on the defense plus an elite offense. It's hard for me to give as much credit to Vasilevsky as everyone else does because he's carried by such an elite team.
That's totally fair. I understand. That's totally fair.
And if I could have one goaltender, I'd have Carey Price.
Whoa. What's all this mess about John Gibson's the best goalie in the world?
John Gibson, too. That's a good point. If you ask me top 5 goalies, Gibson's on the list. Probably, with how he's playing this year, number 1. Carey Price is hard to argue against. Tuukka Rask is in my top 5. You could put Vasilevsky in there. And honestly, it's really hard to argue, Zach, against Anton Khudobin over the last 2 years, too.
Sure, no doubt in there. But I think that one that I would take, he's had a fantastic year this year. He won the Vezina a few years ago, is Sergei Bobrovsky. He's got Florida rolling down there. They've won a lot of games. He had a lot of success there. They beat that President's Cup trophy winning Tampa Bay Lightning team there with Torts and Panarin and those guys. And I think you got to give Sergei Bobrovsky some love. Bob.
Okay. So who would your top 5 goaltenders be? Because it's such a difficult position to rank.
It is. I think you got to throw Carey Price in there. I agree with your list pretty good. I think you got to throw Carey Price in there. You've got to throw Bobrovsky in there. You could make an argument for Carter Hart. Carter Hart's playing pretty well. Give him a look.
I haven't seen enough out of him yet to put him there. I put him in my top 10. I don't know if I'm ready to put him in the top 5.
Yeah, I think that I think my top 5 would be, in no particular order, would be Carey Price, would be
Agree.
Sergei Bobrovsky. I think Carter Hart, Tuukka Rask, and I'm going to put Andre Vasilevsky ahead of Tuukka Rask just because of his mental stability, if that makes sense.
So no John Gibson in your top 5?
No John Gibson, no.
Okay.
Not knocking him, but it's just one of those things where it sucks that he's on a bad team, but I hope that he gets either some talent in Anaheim or I hope that he can go somewhere else where he can prove himself. But right now, no.
Okay. So we agree with some of the same, but we have a couple differences.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to argue, too, though, against Freddie Anderson. He's actually had a really good season so far.
He has, but Toronto has had him up there, and he's played well for a few seasons now, but he just gets worn down because Toronto gives up 45 shots a game, and by the end of the year, man, he's just toast going in the postseason. So it'll be interesting to see what he does this year because of the shortened season, only being half as long, more than half games, but only, we skipped the first 3 months of the season, so we'll see. But he's really good. I don't know if I put him in my top 5, though.
There's a lot of good goaltenders because, 2 other guys we didn't even talk about, Connor Hellebuck and Jacob Markstrom.
Yeah, Hellebuck won the Vezina last year. It's in there. I think that
it's such a fluky position, and it's so hard to rank because, guys 1 year look elite, they win the Vezina, and then next year they can't even stop a shot. So
if you'd asked me this question 3 years ago, I'm sure Braden Holtby would have been on that list.
Yep. Maybe even Jonathan Quick.
Quicky's battling out there, but I just don't. He's not
there anymore.
As much as I would love to see him succeed, I just don't think he's got it anymore. For his peak run, for that 4 or 5 years that he was in his peak, he was the greatest goaltender I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I think he had a .950 save percentage in one of the playoffs, which is the record. And it was just phenomenal. Tim Thomas in 2011 was phenomenal. Jonathan Quick in 2012 was better. Which is stupid. If you go to these stats and look at these stats, and yes, some of them are very skewed because you've got better teams and what you face night in, night out. But I know that Tim Thomas in 2011, his save percentage was a .938, which I believe was the record at that time. And so Jonathan Quick, the very next year, put up a 2012 put up a .946 save percentage. Think about that.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
That is incredible.
Yeah. Well, we hope you guys enjoy the NHL coverage. We'll keep bringing you more. We rolled out a new segment for you. The season has been crazy. It's been a lot of fun to keep up with. There's so many great teams, so many great storylines. The division realignment has made for very entertaining content so far. And keep an eye out in the future for some more baseball coverage. We're going to be making these shift. But, as always, if you want to interact with us, the best place to do that is Twitter. Our handle is @CallOurShots. And if you would like to support our show, you can find the link at patreon.com/callingmyshots.
That's right, boys and girls. Have a safe week. Good luck in your Super Bowl bets. We will see. Should be a good game. Hopefully will be a good game. And like Dalton said, we're going to kick up some baseball soon. So make sure to hop on. Follow us on Twitter. Follow us on all the social media sites, whatever you prefer that to be. Leave us a like. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. And keep riding the train with us. This has been Calling
My
Shots.